So I'm going to get us started with the sponsors in hopes that in that meantime they will be on board, okay? A Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Ruvain ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara, Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann, in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bas Ephraim, Israel David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blash, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov. A Month of Learning by Dov Budlander in memory of his father, Tzvi ben Yaakov Yitzchak, his mother Bela Devasha bas Harav Dober, his father-in-law Yehuda Tzvi ben David Nachum, his mother-in-law Alta Chaya bas Avram Yosef. Also, Mel and Haran Haller, getting an echo. I don't know if that's me or somebody else. In memory of his father, Avram ben Zev. Also today, a Day of Learning plus Torah Fund dedication by Ann and David Klar, in memory of her father, Mordechai ben Eliezer. Today also a Day of Learning by Barbara and Sandy Cohen, in memory of her father, Shmuel ben Shlomo. May the Neshamas have an Aliyah, Kranker Afia Velti, Yashir Hashem Ataliah, and L'chol B'nai Israel Good Geben Shtiar.
Amen.
Okay. Okay. Just want to, okay. Marvin, you may need to mute yourself.
I beg your pardon?
I said, I think you may need to, if you feel you need to mute yourself, I understand. Okay? All right. Ted is on board.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay.
Morning, Ted.
So we're going to pick up the Gemara. As we've seen, it's been dealing with issues pertaining to the topic of, does the Eruv have to be more appropriate to the needs of the individual, okay, in terms of foodstuffs and the amount, or does it have to be clear that it's got to be enough food for 2 meals? And then the Gemara wanted us to clarify, does that mean enough food to be able to satisfy parts of each meal, or enough food to have for 2 full meals? Okay, that seemed to be part of the discussion. Okay, and then they made the comparison, we said, to the issue of clothing. Okay, that where they tried to draw the parallel that using a piece of cloth 3 by 3, okay, 3 tfachim by 3 tfachim, would be valid piece of cloth susceptible to tumah, okay, because poor people use it as patches in their clothing, versus rich people who would not do so, okay? And that was what we found on the top of Amud Aleph, okay, and coming back then to the issue of Eruv, okay, was where it was concluding, okay? That's where we saw, okay? So the Gemara is still trying to deal with this issue. Does it have to be what I'll call for the moment person appropriate, or is there a more general measure? Okay, and we saw okay, that we sort of ended with the phrase kasha. Indeed, this still remains problematic. Umi amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar hachi, Bahatanya, and didn't Rabbi Shimon say, right, Omer, okay, the following. And that's where we're picking up, okay, that Rabbi Shimon may still be indicating, okay, that why did this Braita, did he say that the glutton, the Ra'avatan, has to be according to a average person's needs, okay? Bahatanya, says the Braita again.
Just where in the art scroll?
This is, we're on about 6 lines down on 30A1, Lamed Amud Aleph. Bahatanya, but wasn't it taught elsewhere in a Braita? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Og melech habashan pitcho kimla'o. Namely, that the Og, who was a giant, okay? In other words, if the body is in a residence, okay, you need a doorway large enough for that body. Only then would that single doorway become tameh with the deceased body. But otherwise, if you did not have a single doorway large enough, okay, in that case, you would have a problem because then all the doorways would be such that they could be rendered tuma. Okay? Abaye, and as far as Abaye then is going to say that that comparison is not valid. Why? Hatam hechi la'avid hadumi nahadme v'nafke. What are we going to do, says Abaye? Are you going to say that we're going to cut up the body in pieces and carry it out piecemeal? Ibayalaho. So the sages then ask the following question, right? Plige Rabbanan alei de Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer olo. Did the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer on this Braita or not? Tashma. Listen to the following, says Braita. The Amar Rabba bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Og melech habashan pitcho ba'arba'ah. That Og melech habashan, even though he was considered a giant, so long as there was a doorway that was at least 4 tfachim, right? Then that was not a problem to get him through the door, that doorway, and that would be the only one potential of tuma. Hatam the ikaptachim ktanim tuba. There we said that's because in that example, to that Braita, we said there were numerous, many more smaller openings. Ve'ikecha dahave arba'ah. And there existed one that was 4 tfachim. Devadai ki kamarach, bahahu kamarvach. Because at the time, okay, when it came time to bring him out, we could use the doorway that was 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim. And if he has to widen it, he would widen that particular doorway and not any others. Now, Amar Rav Chia bar Rav Ashi Amar Rav. Okay. So the Gemara wants to say another, coming back to a phrase we heard before. Ma'arvin babasar chai. It's permissible to make an eruv using raw meat. Okay. Amar Rav Shimi bar Chia. And another sage is saying, Ma'arvin babeitzim chayot. We can make an eruv using raw eggs. Okay, reminded me of the old, the movie, what's his name? Okay, from Philadelphia, boxer, right? Drink raw eggs. V'kama, and how many? Okay, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, echad. According to Rav Nachman, 1 raw egg would be sufficient. Sinai, which was a nickname for Rav Yosef, Amar Shtayim. He says, however, that 2 eggs were necessary. Okay, that the reference to Sinai comes back to a story elsewhere in the Gemara where Rav Yosef and another colleague were supposedly in the possible choices to head the Masifta, the yeshiva, and the question was who was better, the one who had a, so to speak, Rav Yosef, who had an encyclopedic knowledge of all the law, or the one who could derive various other aspects from a single law. Now, let's go on. Hanoder min hamazon, mutar b'mayim. We come back now to our new piece from the Mishnah. Okay? If one takes a vow refraining from nourishment, he is still permitted to have, said the Mishnah, water and salt. Melech umayim hu delo ikre mazon. This seems to be, says the Gemara, because water and salt and water are not considered real foodstuffs. Ha kol mile ikre mazon. This seems therefore to imply that all other things would be considered valid foodstuffs. In other words, good for sustenance. Lema tiyue tiyufta de Rav u'Shmuel. Shall we say then that this is going to be a proof text against Rav and Shmuel? De Rav u'Shmuel de Amre Travayu, because Rav and Shmuel, the two of them both said, Ein mevarchin borei minei mizonot, that we don't say the blessing of borei minei mizonot, who creates species of sustenance, ela al chameshet haminim bilvad, except on the 5 kinds of grains. Okay? Remember, like Pesach, we get spelt and barley, oats and rye and wheat, things like that. Velo otvine chadazimna. So the Gemara says, but didn't we answer this one time already? Lema tiyuvtaihu nami meha. So let us say that this can be another proof text from this example, as says the Gemara. Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna ba'omer kol hazan alai. Okay, it's when the person takes his vow and he says, all that can bring sustenance to me. Okay, might be the way we could translate it, right? Okay. I am umelech hu de lo zaine, because water and salt do not sustain him. Ha kol mile zaine, which seems to imply, therefore, that all other kinds of foodstuffs can sustain him. V'hamar Rabba bar bar Chana, but did not Rabba bar bar Chana tell us the following story? Ki hava azlina batre de Rabbi Yochanan, when I went along behind Rabbi Yochanan, Lamichal Pire de Genosar, we went to eat fruit from the area of Genosar, which was a very productive area near the Kinneret. Okay, fine fruit. Ki havinan beimea, where if we were 100 people, hava menaktinan lachol chad vechad asara asara, then each one of us would gather 10 fruits. Okay? Ki havinan be'asara, if we were a group of 10, let's say, hava menaktinan lekol chad vechad mea mea, then each one of us would collect and harvest 100 fruits. Lekol mea minaihu lo havi machazik laho tsana bas tzlata seya ave. And even 100, okay, we're going to say the fruits were large. Even if I had 100 fruits, they would not fill a basket that was the size of 3 seah. Okay, a huge, huge basket. V'hava achil laho lekulhan. Okay, and what had happened? He said, right, that Rabbi Yochanan would eat all this fruit. Va'amar, and he would say, Shavu'ata delo ta'im li ziona. I was willing to take an oath that this doesn't satisfy me. I'm not completely satisfied, not completely full. So the Gemara says, Ema mazona. Instead, explain it as that he said, I am not completely full of sustaining food. Must have had some appetite, Rabbi Yochanan. Huh? Amar Rav Huna. And therefore Rav Huna now says in the name of Rav, Shavua shelo ochel kikar zo. Okay? If a person makes a vow and says, I will not eat from this loaf, excuse me, ma'arvim lo ba. It's still permissible, I'm going to say, to make an eruv for that person using that loaf. Kikar zo alai. If he says, this loaf, okay, is forbidden on me, ein ma'arvim lo ba. We cannot use that loaf to make an eruv for him. Meitive. But now the Gemara is going to challenge with the following question. Hanoder min hakikar ma'arvin lo ba mai. Okay, if we say that he takes an oath not to benefit from this loaf, and then the Mishnah says he can still use it for a eruv. Why? Lav da'amar alai. Wasn't it because he said on me? Was it the language he used in the vow? Lo, da'amar zo. No, because in this case, he's referring to this particular loaf. Hachanami mistabra. This also seems logical. The Katani Seifa. Why? Because the end of our Braita teaches, Ematai, when Bisman she'amar shavua shelo et amena. At the point where he makes a vow that as if I wouldn't taste it. Aval amar alai mai. But when he says on me, what's the implication? Hachinami. Here too, the ein ma'arvin lo. Right? Because our Braita, our Mishnah says we can't use it, the Braita can't use it to make an eruv. Ihachi, if that's the case, adatani kikar zo, when he taught about this particular loaf, okay, hekdesh and ma'arvin lo. Hekdesh, oh yes, one should be able to use it for an eruv. Lafisha ein ma'arvin behekdeshot. Okay, ein, right? Okay, I'm sorry, hekdesh ein ma'arvin. That if something is hekdesh also, if he declared by his verbal statement, like a vow, but now he's declaring something as hekdesh by a verbal statement, therefore there too, it's a situation that he shouldn't be able to use it. Okay? Right? Okay, why is that the case? Lafisha ein ma'arvin behekdeshot. So the Gemara now raises the following question. Liflog v'letnei b'dida. So let him differentiate, okay, and teach about each of the vows separately. In other words, a vow for refraining from food versus a vow or a utterance regarding making something hekdesh. B'med varim amurim. What are we talking about then? The amar zo, because he said this, excuse me, particular loaf. Aval amar alai, but if he simply said on me, okay, ein ma'arvin lo ba, okay. In other words, if he said this loaf is forbidden for me, okay, what do we understand from that? Any possible use of the loaf is forbidden, not simply as a foodstuff, but even for him to benefit from that loaf by using it as foodstuff in an eruv, right? Because we've said before, we've got examples from our Mishnah that has told us that one could use foodstuffs in an Eruv, okay, which somebody else could eat, even though the Eruv is for that particular person, okay, who could not eat that foodstuff. All right. So going on, Amar lach Rav Huna. Rav Huna could come back and answer, Elamai. So what are we saying here? Kol hecha da'amar alai. Any time that he says it's on me, ma'arvin, that one could use it for an eruv, kasha resha. That means that the beginning part of the Mishnah, okay, is problematic. Chasuri michsara v'hachi katani. No, says the Gemara, something is missing, and this is how we have to teach it. Okay, so now they're rewording really the Braita. Hanoder min hakikar, one who takes an oath regarding a loaf. Ma'arvin lo ba, one can make an eruv with it for that person. Va'afilu amar alai ne'aseh ka'omer shavua shalo et ta'amarna. Okay, and if he says on me, it's as if he had said, I take a vow that I wouldn't taste it. Mikol makom, nevertheless, kasha la Rav Huna. This was problematic for Rav Huna. Hu de'amar ka Rabbi Eliezer. And we see why, because Rav Huna holds the same way that Rabbi Eliezer does. Okay? Because we're told, the Tanya Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer taught and says, Shavua shelo ochel kikar. If one makes a vow and says that I will not eat this loaf of bread, ma'arvin lo ba. It's permissible to make an eruv for that person with it. Kikar zo olai. But if he says this bread, this loaf of bread is prohibited to me, okay? Ein ma'arvin lo ba. We cannot make an eruv with it for him. Umi amar Rabbi Eliezer hachi. And did Rabbi Eliezer really say this? Okay. Vahatanya. But wasn't it taught elsewhere in another Braita? The following, Zehaklau. This is the general principle. Adam oser atzmo ba'ochel, ma'arvin lo ba. That if a person prohibits himself a certain foodstuff, okay, we can still use it to make an eruv for him. Ochel hane'asar lo la'adam. A foodstuff that is totally forbidden for the person. Ein ma'arvin lo ba. We cannot use it to make a eruv for the person. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer, however, says, Kikar zo alai. If he says this loaf of bread is forbidden for me, ma'arvin lo ba. We can use it to make the eruv. Kikar zo hekdesh. This loaf is considered sanctified. Ein ma'arvin lo ba. We cannot use it to make an eruv. Lafisha ein ma'arvin lo behekdeshot. Because we are not able to make an eruv from items that have been sanctified. So what happens? Trey Tanai Ve'aliba de Rabbi Eliezer. The Gemara says we must have two different Tanaim that have two different versions of what Rabbi Eliezer taught. And that's how we conclude that particular section. Okay? Coming back now to our Mishnah. Remember, our Mishnah seems, we said, to imply clearly that even if the person can't himself eat or drink that item, it still might be usable for the eruv. And so the Mishnah said, Ma'arvin lenazir b'yayin chulei. Okay, that was one. The other example was, remember, for an Israelite with Truma. Matnitin delo kebeit Shammai. Our Mishnah then cannot be according to the view of Beit Shammai. The Tanya Beit Shammai. Why? Because the Braita teaches. Beit Shammai says, Ein ma'arvin lenazir bayayin, that one is not permitted to make an eruv for a nazir using wine, uli Yisrael betruma, or for an Israelite using truma produce. Beit Hillel omrim, Beit Hillel on the other hand says, ma'arvin lenazir bayayin, uli Yisrael betruma, that it is permissible to make an eruv for a nazir using wine and for an Israelite using truma. Amru lehen Beit Hillel leBeit Shammai. And so Beit Hillel says to Beit Shammai in an effort to convince them, right? I atem modim, don't you acknowledge as we go to the next side, Shema arvin legadol b'yom haKippurim, that it's permissible to make an eruv for an adult in Yom Kippurim, implying that since eating is permitted for a minor on Yom Kippur, therefore, even though the adult can't eat it, okay, therefore it's still going to be a valid eruv. Amru lahen, okay, and they said then, aval, indeed. Amru lahen, they said back to him, Keshem shema'arvin legadol b'yom haKippurim, kein ma'arvin lenazir b'yayin u'liyisrael b'truma. The same way we can make an eruv for an adult on Yom Kippur, but somebody else, namely a minor, can eat it. Likewise, we can make an eruv for a nazir with yayin. Somebody else can drink it, or for an Israelite, somebody else, namely a Kohen, can eat the truma produce. Beit Shammai, as regards to Beit Shammai, Hatam ika seudah haru'uyami ba'od yom. Argue instead, but there you have a case where that meal, when it's prior to Yom Kippur, okay, prior to the start of sundown, it's a valid meal. It's one that theoretically the adult could have participated in. Okay? Hacha, but in this case, namely of the Nazir or of the Israelite, leka seudah haru'uyami ba'od yom. You don't have a meal or a substance that is suitable, I'm going to say, appropriate for that person before the start of Shabbat. So how can you make that comparison? Keman, according to whom? Delo kechananya. It can't be according to Chananya, the Tanya who taught elsewhere in a Braita. Chananya says, Kol atzman shel Beit Shammai, okay, lo hayu modim be'eruv ad sheyotzei mitato v'kol kli tashmisho l'sham. Okay, rather strong position for Beit Shammai, right? According to Chananya, okay, that the Beit Shammai would not allow themselves to set up a location for an eruv. Not, in other words, they wouldn't use simply foodstuffs. They had to take their bed and also a number of utensils, articles, whether it's clothing, household utensils, and put it there because they felt that the purpose of the eruv was to, so to speak, reestablish one's residence on Shabbat in that location. Kaman Azla, according to whom? Okay. Hadatanya, according to whom is that taught? Namely, we find the following. Irev b'shchorim, lo yetza b'levanim. That if he made the eruv wearing dark clothes, he can't go out on Shabbat wearing white clothes. Bilavanim, if he made the Erev, according to Beit Shammai, in white clothes, lo yetzei b'shchorim, he can't go out wearing dark clothes. Keman, according to whom? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Chananyahi. That's the view of Chananya, v'aliba de Beit Shammai. And it's according to the opinion of Beit Shammai, okay? Who, as we said, required all the other items, okay, for that purpose. So the Gemara now is going to continue, okay, and try to clarify. Ulachananya b'shchorim hu delo yetzei. And when Chananya says that in dark clothes he may not go out, okay, beyond his tchum, okay, the implication being otherwise the Erev there, okay, to extend it doesn't work. Habilavanim yetzei, but could he go out with the white clothes? Ha'amar ad sheyotzi mitato uklei tashmisho l'sham. Didn't he say, in other words, didn't Beit Shammai hold, okay, that it was not valid unless he took out his bed and utensils, okay, that he would need for Shabbat? Hachi ka'amar. This is what it means to say, actually the Braita. Irev b'levanim v'hutzrach l'shchorim. If he made his Erev wearing white clothes, but he had need of dark clothes, af b'levanim lo yetzei. Even in the white clothes, he cannot go out past his tchum. Keman, according to whom? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Chananyahi, va'aliba de Beit Shammai. That's according to the view of Chananya and the teaching of Beit Shammai. Okay, we go now to another new piece from our Mishnah, where we saw there was a machloket by which Sumchus said that the Israelite could only use chulin for and not use truma, right, towards the Eruv. So the Gemara now wants to clarify this. Ve'ilu lenazir bayayin lo plalig. However, for the Nazirite, the use of wine, it doesn't seem that he's arguing. Ma'itama, what's the reasoning? Efshar de machil agzerote. It's possible that he could be released, namely the Nazir could be released from his vow. Okay? In other words, once he's released by a chacham from the vow, okay, or by a beis din of 3, okay, he could then drink that wine, and so it's possible for him to still benefit from it on Shabbat. Ihachi, trumanami, says the Gemara. If that's your logic, okay, then with regards to truma also, the same should be possible. Nami de efshar de mitchal iluye. It should be possible that he also could be released from the vow, because the truma could be designated verbally. Doesn't have to be just done physically. Okay? So he could be released there. All right, so the Gemara wants to continue and tell us. Imachil Allah, hadra lativla. No, that's not a valid argument, says the Gemara. Because if he's released from that vow, that produce returns to tevel, to untithed produce. Okay? So the Gemara says then, V'lifrosh Allah mimakom acher. So let him separate it from another place. Okay? Lo nechshtu chaverim letrom shalom min hamukaf, answers the Gemara. That chaverim would not be suspect of doing truma from something else other than something that's close by. So the Gemara says, V'lifrosh Allah mina uve. Okay, so let him take a small amount of that same produce, and designate that as truma, and it will cover the whole kit and caboodle, so to speak. Gemara's answer, delete bashi ora. Okay, that in this case we're saying there's not an adequate measurement for both the truma to be taken and to have necessarily for the eruv. Okay, umai pascha. Okay, so what then is the necessity? What is the result? Ela sumchus savar la karabanan. That sumchus must hold like the rabbis. The amre kol davar shahu mishum shvut. That the rabbis say that anything that was a gzera, that they determined based on shvut, was a gzera de rabbanan, prohibited act of work, okay, or requirement to rest, shkazru alav rabbanan, bein hashmashot, that occurred before the twilight, therefore it's forbidden on Shabbat. Okay, and that's how we have the answer. Now, keman azla haditnan. So now we come back, okay, and ask the question. So then, according to whom was this taught? Yesh sha'amru hakol lefi masha hu adam. Okay, so we have a situation coming back to really, okay, to what then is the Mishnah trying to get us? Do we say then that it's according to the individual? Melo kumso mincha, right? So therefore, okay, so we take this other example, okay, of certain situations, okay, let's say how much a kometz, how much has to be taken by the kohen to be burnt for the mincha, umelo chafnav ketoret, okay, or we can say another example, okay, of incense, all right, okay, hashoteh malay logmo b'yom hakippurim, or we take another example that one is over on drinking if he has a full mouthful, so to speak, okay, on Yom Kippur. And in each one of these cases, okay, what our example is that these are all based on in an individual. One person has a bigger hand than another. So the kometz is going to be different. One might have a bigger mouth than the other. So the amount of a mouthful is going to vary from one person to another. Okay? Ubamazon shtei seudot le'eruv. And then we apply this and say food for 2 meals for an eruv.
Come on.
Okay? In other words, keman, according to whom? So again, coming back to our original question that we saw earlier, is there really a definitive amount, or does it depend on the necessities of the individual? Amar Rabbi Zera, sumachos hi. That is the view of sumachos. Our Mishnah follows the view of sumachos. The Amar, mai dechazele ba'inan, okay, who says that what he needs, okay, or what is suitable for him is what he, in other words, that individual needs. Lema pliga ad Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Shall we say then that this disagrees with the view of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar? The Tanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar omer ma'arvin lechola ulezakein kadei mizono, that we make a eruv for a sick person or a older person according to his food needs. Okay, so that would fit with Sumachas's point to the individual need. Ulera'avatan besu'uda benonit shel kol adam. But for the glutton, a meal that's on the average for most people. So that part would disagree, okay? Because otherwise you would say for the ra'avatan, for the glutton, we've got to have 3 meals worth, let's say, for the 2 meals of the Eruv, okay? So what happens? The Gemara continues and tells us, Tirgamur achole v'zakein, aval ra'avatan, batla da'ato etzel kol adam. Okay, so we explained it, okay, clearly, okay, that it was appropriate, right, in regards to the example of the elder person or the sick person, but in regards to the glutton, okay, we still say that that is based, his view or that view of making it unique for that individual is nullified, okay, in comparison to the average person, and we base our decision, halacha, on what the average person, the rabbis do it, what the average person normally needs, okay? Now, coming back then to the end of our Mishnah, the Kohen b'veit hapras. What about the Kohen that is in this field where tentatively, okay, there could have been a corpse, or the corpse could have been plowed up, and there could be bones there, right? How could it possible be to make an Eruv there? The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, as Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, Minafeach Adam Beit Hapras V'holech. According to this, that the person, okay, that the Kohen can blow, if you will, on the ground in front of him, okay, before, okay, in this Beit Hapras, and then continue, right? Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ami, Mishmei the Rav Yehuda Amar, he says, Beit Hapras Shenidash, if we have a field like this, which has had trampled, a pathway trampled on it, because numerous people have walked on it and thus pushed any bones down below, okay, tahor, then that area, okay, is tahor, okay? That pathway is tahor. Rabbi Yehuda Omer af b'beit hakfarot, again from our Mishnah, that he could make an Eruv even into a cemetery. Tana mepnei sheyachol achutz v'leilech b'sheda v'teva u'migdal. This was taught because we said that the Rabbi Yehuda felt that the Kohen could still have an Eruv there because he could make some sort of a partition, a separation. How? Because he could travel through the cemetery in a carriage, or in a crate, a box, or in a migdal, in some sort of a closet or a cupboard, okay? Kasavar, ohel zaruk, shmei ohel, because he's of the opinion that a traveling tent, if you will, container, is a valid container. Ubeplugta dahani tanai. And this seems to be based on an argument of the following Tanaim. The Tanya who taught Nabraita, hanichnas la'eretz ha'amim, one who enters the neighboring lands, okay, Gentile lands were considered tameh, b'sheda, in a carriage, teva, in a crate, umigdal, in a sort of a closet. Rebbe mitameh. Rebbe says, nevertheless, their person is susceptible to tumah. Rebbe Yossi b'Rebbe Yehuda mitaher. Rebbe Yossi, son of Rebbe Yehuda, says the person is tahor. What are they arguing about? namely Mar Savar Ohel Zaruk Lav Shmei Ohel, that one master must hold, right? That a moving container, okay, is not really a valid container, okay? And it doesn't provide a valid partition to separate the individual from Tuma. Umar Savar Ohel Zaruk Shmei Ohel. And the other master holds that a moving container is still considered a valid and does form a partition between the person and the tumah. Mahad Tanya Rabbi Yehuda, and that which Rabbi Yehuda teaches, let's roll over just a tiny bit, Ma'arvim Lakohen Tahor, who says we can make the Erev for a Kohen who is Tahor, the Truma Tahorah. Now we're talking even with Tahor Truma, right? Bekever, okay, in a cemetery. Heichi Azil, how is that possible to go? Knows how can that become without being Tameh? Besheda, Teva, Umigdal, by use of the enclosed carriage, a crate or box, or some sort of a cupboard or closet. Okay? So the Gemara, however, is going to challenge that. That's where we're going to get to tomorrow. Okay? Challenging that idea and then continue on with some other aspects of foodstuffs, okay, that raise some questions about their use for the Eruv. Okay, so that's where we'll stop right there. Okay, so everybody have a good day. Stay well and take care, everybody.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay.
Be well.
So long.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I guess. Uh,